All right, so welcome back from the break. You're watching the edition of Entertainment Review here on Metro TV. Now, as Nanaya mentioned earlier, today we are going all the way to, I don't know if he's in Kampala, but well, he's British Ugandan and he's been doing some amazing stuff. He's an independent filmmaker doing some great stuff across the continent. He's done something on Nigeria, on Ghana, and today I want to talk about it. And we're talking about telling the African story as a filmmaker, and that's what we've always been saying, that let's tell the story from Africa. Let's push it out there
Yeah.
so that the people can know about Africa and not them telling our stories through their movies and all that. So Norman BUSIGU is on Zoom with us this afternoon. Norman, good afternoon, and Akwaba to
Good
Metro
afternoon,
TV.
sir. Akwaba, sir, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes,
There we
yes,
go.
yes,
Good
yes, yes,
afternoon,
we can
everyone.
hear
I'm happy
you.
to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy to be here. How are we this afternoon?
Fantastic, we are good. I'm here with the ladies. I've got three ladies with me on
Yes.
the set.
All looking beautiful. All looking beautiful. Good
Yeah,
afternoon, ladies.
Thank
but
you.
who are you though?
So I'm in London right now. So yes, I'm British
Oh,
Ugandan,
okay.
a very proud Ugandan. But I'm in London currently, and I was in Lagos about a month ago filming for my second documentary.
Okay, fantastic. For a moment, I thought you were in Kampala, but anyway, we'll get to talk about that later. But let's talk about you as a filmmaker for probably those who are watching and getting to hear of Norman for the very first time. If you could just share with us, I know if they go online, they could read, but it will be nice hearing it from you also. Tell us about you, what you do and all that.
For sure. So I am an independent filmmaker. I am a media broadcaster on television, radio, and live events, and I'm also a published fashion model. So I'm a very proud British Ugandan. I'm award nominated. So last year I was nominated at the Global African Awards for Excellence in Journalism and also Future Leaders Under age of 30. Insofar as my work as a media broadcaster, some of the highlights: I was the first international news correspondent for Ben Television, which is like a leading African network in the UK. I've also hosted high profile events at venues, including the Houses of Parliament. And with regards to modeling, I have notable highlights include featuring in Elle during Autumn Winter Fashion Week 2020, walking for David Wedge at Fashion Week last year in September, being a cover boy for London Runway magazine, and also being one of three models selected for a campaign for Soho House, the private members club, last year for their new skincare line, Soho Skin. So those are some of the things that I've done, and we're here to talk about my work as a filmmaker. So my first film being on Ghana, Africa's exciting entry point, and my upcoming documentary, Nigeria, Can It Shape Its Future?
That's amazing. It looks like you're a man of many parts, many talents. You do a lot of things, and that's amazing. First off, let's begin with of course, is the filmmaking part I want to talk about today. For you,
Yes.
as someone who is African, but also has a bit of you from the diaspora in the UK, how important is it for you to be able to tell the African story as an African, knowing that you're exposed to the other side of the world, but that you can stay authentic to yourself as an African and tell the story the right way? How important is that for you?
Yes, thank you. That's such a good question. And for me, that's so important. And for me, my passion for this really derives from one, the family that I have. So having a family that's very proud of where they're from. And I think also I call it a privilege to have gone back home many times when I was younger. So to Uganda, when I was 10, 14, 18, and then going to Ghana in 2016 when I was about 19, and then again in 2021 to film a documentary. Having those early experiences in my younger years in Africa, it helped me to displace the narratives of what you see in the West. And things are improving, but when I was growing up, so in the 2000s, the way in which we were able to interact with the world wasn't via smartphones and the things that we have now, but it was mainly through TV and books, right? So you'd get that news broadcast of what was happening in Africa. And this is speaking to my personal experience, right? But the way Africa was portrayed back then was very much just embezzlement, malaria, famine. And don't get me wrong, those things exist. No one's denying that. But when I had my experience on the ground, yes, I did see poverty. Yes, I did see, displacement of wealth and things like that. But I also saw the other side, which is very beautiful, the beautiful everyday life, the culture, the richness, and all those things that were omitted in what media was portraying of Africa. And don't get me wrong, things are improving now, especially with the explosive rise of Afrobeats. But I still feel that we haven't, as Africans, truly told our story, right, in terms of how we want the world to see us. And I think we are getting it. I think Afrobeats in particular has been a powerful tool for doing so, in particular music videos, and really removing romanticism and creating a realism of, okay, like this is what's going on the ground, and creating that emphasis of, okay, let's go and let's see what's happening. So that's why that's there. And I think as someone who's in the diaspora, I equally appreciate that I've not lived on the ground. So when I make my films, it's very much a case of interviewing people. And one thing I'm very I try to do in the production process is work with production companies on the ground. So when I was in Ghana, for example, I worked with So Fresh Media, and in Nigeria, I worked with the Malade Film. So both are, homegrown production companies that exist on the ground. And I do that because if I was just to, let's say, take my team from London and we just go out there and film, I feel like it would lose its authenticity, it would lose its realism. And for me, that's so important because though I am an African through and through, I'm someone who lives in the diaspora. So I see the world through a Western lens, and I can completely appreciate that. So if we're going to have that true cross-cultural dialogue, we have to share the microphone and we have to really listen to each other. And I think that's something that I learned when I was younger, interacting with my cousins who live on the ground, in Uganda, and then my later experiences in Ghana and in Nigeria. I did that, we all want to, I believe we all want to have these conversations, but it's about finding those safe spaces and those channels by which we can do so. And that's what I really hope to do through my films, really helping to displace the narratives of how Africa is being seen, and also, doing it in an authentic way that gives people the ability to talk and say what they have to say.
Okay, that's great, Norman. I also want to find out, as you're putting this together, the facts about it needs to be right. Has it been difficult, trying to shoot about Africa, about Ghana, Nigeria? Has it been difficult getting the right people to speak to, the right, production houses to collaborate with? Has it been easy?
Right. So this is the magic of Africa, right? It is the developing world, and there are challenges you're going to face. So let's say, okay, it's really hot one day. So, it's hot. Okay, so if the time is 2 p.m. for filming, people will arrive at 3 or 4. Or, if there's traffic jams, because a lot of the, let's say like Accra or even Lagos, there's just certain main roads, and if like one thing happens on that road, then a 30-minute trip becomes 2 to 3 hours, right? So that's one big sort of logistical challenge that you face a lot of those. And I think one thing I always advise to people is if you're going to do work in Africa, you have to accept there are just going to be unique challenges that you face. So I think one, logistical challenges. I think two, when it comes to the nature of the conversation you're having, right? So let's say if there's politics involved, my new documentary in Nigeria, Can Issue Shape Its Future, there is discussion of NSARS, which is the youth-led mass mobilization to highlight the practices of the anti-robbery special anti-robbery squad of the Nigerian police force. So of course, naturally, not everyone was comfortable talking about that, but we did find people that were willing to do. So I think it's a case of really being transparent with people and saying, look, this is what we want to talk about. But there's nothing defamatory here. There's nothing that we're trying to make anyone look bad. But it's about having honest and open conversations. And I feel that so I'm 27 years old right now, and I feel that there is a gap in that sense of real youth-led, freshful, youthful conversations being had. I still feel that Africa, when you look at documentaries or films that are being made, they still are, in my opinion, in a very archaic sense. Like, let's take Uganda, for example. Idi Amin was there in the 70s and 80s, but in my opinion, a lot of Uganda's conversations stopped there, but that was 40, 50 years ago. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. To your question, there are challenges that you face. Logistical definitely being one of them. And if it rains, if it's too hot, if there's traffic jams, those kind of things. And those happen everywhere. But I feel like, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, those are more enhanced because, the issue of social infrastructure, in terms of, roads, the quality of those, if there's power cuts, those kinds of just everyday challenges, and you have to really accept them and work with them. And then also, again, the nature of the conversations that you're having as well, and being very transparent with people. So those are some of the key things that I would say are there, but they are solutions to them and you can work around them. But I think it's about being patient and being understanding and being transparent. That's what I would say to anyone.
Great.
Yeah, Norman, from everything that you are saying, in recent times, Africa is being seen in a different light, which is very, very good. And when you meet people who are not Africans, even Africans who grew up in London like yourself or any part of the world, when you meet them with regards to music, film, arts, and tourism, what is the conversation like? What do they say? What are they learning from what is being happening in recent times?
That's a very good question. I think the biggest thing is that it's safe, and I don't want to sound extreme here or generalize what people in the West are saying or in London, but based on my experiences and based on my conversations with people that I know in London and America and just Europe with all my personal networks, it's this idea that, well, okay, like Africa is safer than it seems. I think that the issue with how Africa's been portrayed over the decades for so long is that, when you land at the airport, if it's not terrorism, then, you're going to be kidnapped or, you're going to be in some sort of like very extreme things. And, like animals might come and get you. And those, and it sounds very extreme, but people really, really are afraid. Don't get me wrong, there are issues, but to your question, I think now the big conversation is, particularly with tourism, is that wow, okay, there are festivals happening on the ground, and it's safe. There's Uber, there's Domino's, there's foreign investment, there's big companies that everyone knows and loves, like McDonald's, KFC, Domino's, those kinds of things, and it's creating that conversation, it's creating that entry point, and it's creating that familiarity that okay, like these things are here, it should be safe. So I think to your question, the biggest thing now is safety, and then beyond that, curiosity. And I think the magical thing about what Afrobeat has done is it's created almost a gateway. Because if you look at Afrobeats, which was, the time of Fela Kuti, from the 70s and so forth, that was very socially and politically charged music. But Fela Kuti was still a legend in what he did for, broadcasting African culture and African music to the world. But Afrobeats being, the evolution of that, but being more commercialized and being more of a commodity. If we look at WizKid, Essence, Burna Boy's new album, and just if we look at Thames, Ira Star, all of these things, Afro Nation, for example, just slated to be in Lagos later this year in 2023. What this is all doing is it's creating that familiarity, that accessibility, and that curiosity, and the thing that okay, I won't die, and it's not as extreme as it seems, and I want to go and explore. So that's to your question. What I would say, it's creating that curiosity, but also that intentionality of okay, I want to go and visit it because I'm seeing so much happening on the ground, and that, okay, it's my time. I want to go and see what's happening, and I know that bad things won't happen in the way that the media sometimes has portrayed it to be. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and in all that, although they are feeling safe, we want to maintain that their curiosity is being met, and we love that we are satisfying that aspect of everything that they heard or were told in schools, that this and this and this is what their ancestors did. Ghana is at the forefront of Africa's tourism, and every other country from Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, every country is making sure that whatever we are enjoying now, they benefit from it. How do we maintain it? How do we improve upon it so that it becomes something that is not enjoyed by only this generation, but the other generations that are coming? For example, yourself, you put everything in film. You come to Africa. I know you enjoyed Afrochella very much. All these things, what do we do to improve, to maintain, and make sure that everything is done appropriately? Yeah.
Yes, this is such a good question. So there's two things I would say there. So one, it's about ensuring that the locals and the people on the ground are included. And then two, preserving the culture, making sure that we're not gatekeeping it per se, but that we're preserving the purity of it. So to the first point about the locals, one thing that is a common conversation, and I had this in my documentary with somebody called George Ajib Beng, who is the head of innovation at Society Generale in Central Accra. It's this idea that when December comes around, it's December, everyone else flying into the into Accra, spending their money, good life, all those things. But then what happens is the price of things inflates. So the local man can't afford to engage in these activities. They can't afford to go to Afro Nation, or they can't afford, or even if they go to their local shop, because they know tourists are in town, the things that they were buying for, let's say, 15 cities and 20 cities, 30 cities, 40 cities, they can't afford it. You see what I mean? So I think the first thing now is greater involvement from our governments holistically to ensure that when those tourism seasons do come around, and particularly in the peak times, that the locals aren't priced out, because I think that's how we create true sustainability, by ensuring that all sectors of society are able to enjoy, not necessarily those like myself who are flying in and are coming in with our euros or our pounds or our dollars, and that are creating an ecosystem that can sustain itself, and that we don't just leave with all our money, but actually the money that's there is able to still trickle through society and help to build it, so that there's great investment in the roads and generators and hospitals and all of those sorts of things. So that's what I'd say on the first point. And then secondly, with regards to the, let's say, Afrobeats, for example, its explosive rise to the world, there's a big conversation now, I think, that's starting of will it become watered down? Is it really becomes this commodity that's really touching the far corners of the world, America, Asia, Europe, so on and so forth. It's a beautiful thing that the world is now seeing it, but how do we ensure that the genre and the quality of it doesn't become watered down to appease the Western world? And so I think that's the second part of it as well, ensuring that if our culture is being pushed out to the world, ensuring that it doesn't lose its essence, its spark, its purity, and its authenticity, because we have seen this with other genres over the decades, and I think Afrobeats is in that amazing space where, if you look at this Star, for example, Stability, like she is so far global and leading the charge, and on the cover girl of so many incredible magazines and outlets, but her music still feels very pure.
Yeah.
It still feels very authentic. And I think it's about, as African music, as an example, just one particular facet of things. If African music is to continue going to the world and it being that point of reference, let's say back to Ghana or Nigeria or wherever, that it maintains that purity. And so we as a community have to do our bit in ensuring that we don't water things down and that we keep that purity preserved. Those are my 2 points that I would say. Making sure the locals on the ground aren't priced out and removed from the activities. And then secondly, as our culture continues to go global, that we are able to preserve it in a way that's authentic.
All right, Norman. Well, I want to find out how you balance the desire to educate and inform the African audience, or generally the world, about African issues while creating an engaging and entertaining film.
Right, that's a very good question. Could you repeat that? So the balance between educating and then also entertaining, is that the question you're getting at?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And
Yeah, was that the question?
okay,
Yeah.
so I also want to find out what are some of the approach.
I think
So the
that
first question he didn't hear.
you didn't hear?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
was that, yeah, just
Okay,
yeah.
so how do you balance your desire to educate and inform audiences about African issues while creating an engaging and entertaining film?
Right, okay, cool. Right, how do I strike that? That's a very good question. Okay, so I think this is sort of the presenter, the broadcaster in me. I understand that. It would be great to, let's say, create a 50-minute film that goes through the history of Ghana and Nkrumah, neo-colonialism with Ghana today, and having lots of facts and data that might not necessarily make the most entertaining piece. And I think there's always a balance to be struck with entertainment and media and art form. I think especially in the time that we're in now, the digital era, well, they are saying that our attention spans are a lot shorter, and we're so hyper exposed to things. I think now more than ever, it's very important to again try and strike that balance between educating and informing, but also entertaining as well. Because I think an entertaining piece is something that leaves a lasting memory. I think all the information that I kind of convey in my documentaries, for the most part, can be found in books when I'm relaying back, historical information about, the Big Six or Nkrumah or Independence Square. I think the entertainment element of it as well is the thing that makes it that experience people. So, for example, my documentary on Ghana, it's not released online as yet, but I've had a series of high-profile screenings. So, 2 at the Private Members Club Soho House, Cambridge University, British Television, and it was shortlisted for a film festival in Paris as a semi-finalist. So, all that to say, I believe that the entertainment element of things is what enables it to really create that reach and something that is an experience and a point of memory for people, as opposed to just information in blocks that might not be digestible. So I think the entertainment side of things makes it digestible.
Okay, so if you just joined us, we're speaking to Norman BUSIGU all the way from London. We're talking about telling the African story as a filmmaker, and he's got something amazing about Ghana also, and we're going to check that out. Ghana, Africa's Exciting Entry Point, a documentary by Norman BUSIGU. So let's take a look at the trailer.
Which one we doing? Which one we doing?
Okay, so that was the one about Nigeria. Will possibly bring you the one about Ghana. But Norman, if you're there, it's exciting to see your work there. But as we wrap up on this conversation, let's talk about Ghana. What exactly is the story behind this documentary that you did about Ghana?
On Ghana, Africa's exciting entry point, essentially critically examines the phenomenal rise of tourism in Ghana and the contributing factors that caused that prominent trend. And so I was the presenter, the protagonist, the person taking you through that journey, my voyage from London to Accra from December of 2021 throughout January of 2022. And I chronicle my journey throughout that time. And I go to Ghana to really explore how the country has transformed itself as the new hub for destination for entertainment, business, tourism, and culture, and also in many ways being a true creative economy for Africans and those in the diaspora. So that's sort of the blurb of what I was doing out there and what I sought out to explore.
Okay, that's amazing. How long did it take you to shoot that documentary?
So I was there for about I was in Ghana, for about a month. There were about 4 filming days with the production company So Fresh Media. I'm sorry, excuse me. But on my off days when I wasn't filming, that footage found its way in the documentary because I had time in Kumasi, Cape Coast, Boti, Oburi. And so the answer to your question is technically 4 structured filming days, but then also other footage throughout my time there. So even nightlife as well and all those kind of things. And that helped around my experience. So yeah, if we say about a month, that's the kind of overall time. But then my scheduled filming days are only 4 filming days in Ghana.
Okay, great. I mean, just before we go, Norman, I would like to, find out from you. You have taken the initiative to, tell the African stories. Not a lot of producers are doing that. And over the years, we've seen Hollywood tell the African story some way, somehow. I mean, in recent times, there was The Woman King, which talks about the West African Dahomey story, now Benin. And a lot of people have criticized that movie in particular, that it was fictional, it was dishonest, among other things. They didn't tell the story the way it's supposed to be. According to them, the Dahomey was, part of the slave trade. But then in the movie, they made it look like he wasn't a part of it at all. What can we do moving forward? Would producers take the initiative of telling our own story the way it should be told?
Yeah, no, thank you for this. And I think there's 2 ways to look at this. Either more authentic producers, people like yourselves, like you and I, who really hold this near and dear to our hearts, are involved at the table of these films. Or if we can't get in those rooms, then we create our own rooms and we start making our own productions. And that's basically the point I'd reached, because I honestly, if there was more of what I wanted to see being done, I would just join that team and put in my efforts. But I felt that in terms of making documentaries in the way that I'm making them, trying to make them as pure as possible and really tackling these key topics in a way that I haven't seen before, it wasn't being done. So I just thought, you know what, I know I've got the skill set and I've got the resources and the connections. Let me do this myself, sort of thing. So to answer your question, yes, either we find our way into those rooms or we create our own rooms and really pull together our resources. And I think as a community, that's something we need to be doing more of. I think not just, let's say, Ghanaians, Nigerians, Ugandans, but as a collective, as Africans, especially across the diaspora as well. That cross-cultural dialogue is increasing, but I think there's still so much more that we can be doing. And I think that we haven't even scratched the surface of what we can do if we really start pulling our resources together, be it finances, be it connections, be it just artistic content, all of those things we haven't locked in yet in the truest sense. And I think that when we do, it will just, we'll hit a whole new dimension that's just never been seen before. So let's hope we can work towards that. That's what I would say.
Okay. All right, Norman. When are you coming to Ghana?
Okay. I need to go Kampala first. I haven't been in a few years. Next year, hopefully, because I was even meant to be in Accra to seeing all of you in the studio, but I couldn't get my dates to align. So
definitely.
So you're going to miss out on Afro Future this year.
I know, because even now December they're saying I have to go back to Lagos, and then I don't know. They even at Kampala, I don't know.
Okay, so you actually go for Afro Nation, right?
We'll see. But I need a trip back to Accra anyway. It's been a few years, and I think I love Accra so much. So I'm overdue a trip. So if I'm there, I'm in town, I'll let you know. But sooner rather than later, I need to come back. But my time is so stretched.
Yeah.
But no, as soon as possible. When I'm around, I'll let you know for sure.
Okay. Norman, thank you. It's been awesome talking to you. If you see Ghanaians in London, say hi to them, and especially the latest Ghanaian to be in London. That is Mohammed Kudus, who's joining West Ham. Well, you see him, say hi to him for us. But of course, it's good having you this afternoon here on Entertainment Review. Wish you the very best. And whenever you come to town, just let us know and we hang out.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And God bless you all. Thank you very much for the time this afternoon and the great conversation, honestly. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, so that was Norman BUSIGU. He's a Ugandan filmmaker, based in London. And we were talking about telling the African story as a filmmaker. He's made some documentaries on Nigeria, and the latest one is about Ghana. And really, really excited when we had to talk about that. Share with us what people in the diaspora think about Africa, how we can also tell our stories and all that. It was an exciting one.